Welcome. Good to have you along again. Second video, finding the idea for your book. This process is structured to blend creativity with strategy. I have found it works very well, and so I'm passing it on in hopes that it works well for you too. It is, the book at this stage is a little intimidating because you're trying to find an idea, and for many people this is the difficult part, right? I remember a story of Charles Dickens who was struggling, could not work out the plot, the theme, characters, the process. He was very frustrated, already and well-respected and experienced novelist. So he roamed the streets of London at night, a rather dangerous exercise because he never frequented the better areas, and in that roaming, he found his idea, the idea for his most famous and most popular book, The Christmas Carol. So you can see it is a difficult step and something we need to take some time and work out why, and then break it down and see how we can do it. It could best be described as a jigsaw puzzle, to use an analogy, that we can't see the picture on the back of the box. We can't even see all the pieces yet. And therefore we don't know how it all fits together. But let's go through and see if we can bring clarity. So we'll start with questions. What do you read? This is important. Favorite books? And can you analyze those books and extract the essence as to why they are your favorite? What theme, what elements are there that you resonate with, connect with? This is an important aspect that we must get to the bottom of. The next question is, what movies do you like? What series do you like? And again, the same question. What elements of that movie appeal to you? And why? Ask those questions and go to your journal and begin to write down, be it electronic or written. Write down the questions and the answers under this section, section 1, finding the idea, and see if you can get to the bottom of it. We are trying to understand what you like and why you like it. The next question is why? Why is that important? The reason it's important is because you are the single most important element in this novel. To give the Latin phrase, the sine qua non, the essential ingredient. You will set everything, and we need to make sure that you are writing what you like, because that will make it successful. This will make it easier, and you will have a better ability to write to more elements of this if it is in sync with you and not askew with you. So this novel that you are working on, we want to understand what you like, what you dislike, your desires, thoughts, passions. And to get to that point, we almost need to understand you better than you know yourself. To know you better than you know yourself. This is a rather difficult process because in the world we are generally outwardly focused. We are not paying attention so much of the time to actually ourselves. And it is important here that you focus inwards so that we can get to the bottom of who you are. I am reminded, as I said that, of an Oscar Wilde quote in which he was at a fancy dress party and he and a friend were off to the side observing people arrive in their costumes, and he was noticing that there was a pattern to what costume and what mask is chosen. And the quote is, "A mask is sometimes more revealing than a face, for that which hides also reveals." And it's a good quote because we tend to project what we want to and what we're sometimes compensating for. And that projection is sometimes the opposite in order to mask. But in doing that, if you're paying attention, the mask is the complete opposite of what you are in and of yourself. And therefore, it sort of does reveal and give away quite a bit. And this is what Oscar Wilde was alluding to. So ask these questions because you must know yourself well here and understand yourself, because you have to ask questions and you will be dealing with a character that you will create in this novel. And that character will be largely based on you. So more questions. What is the conflict? How does your character play into that conflict? What is the location? What is the time period? So this is important, right? What is the theme? Is it romantic? Is it fantastical? Is it realistic, historical? Is it futuristic? Motivations, greed, love, revenge. Is your character against God, fate, man, woman, themselves, or nature? Right? These are all good questions. You're putting them in your journal. I sometimes do it as bubbles on the page. I don't know how these connect, but they are questions that I attempt to answer truly, so I can sense and feel what is real. What is real is important. An editor told me years ago, the reader will know if it's not real. Your characters will not be three-dimensional. They will not be fully realized. So this is what we are attempting to do. Moving on, the next questions I want to address is personal disclosure. In personal disclosure, you have to ask the question of how much then, if we are working with ourselves, how much is real? So we're working in the realms of fiction, possibly, right? And I'm assuming you're choosing your genre, right? And your genre could be, romance. It could be romance fantasy. It could be historical, could be lots of aspects in the fiction, children's. You're picking that genre, but you're putting a lot of yourself into the book. And many parts of that make the book almost autobiographical, if you think of it. So if, for example, I take my books with the novels, which are suspense thrillers, and there are 3 of them out at the moment, 2 are in production, and book number 6 in the series, the James Moore series, is about halfway done. I'm writing that at present. So how much of that character element is real? The loss of his father is true. His mother's being non-existent in his growing up, that's true. The Royal Navy cadets, that's true. A small English sleepy fishing village, absolutely true. Grandfather telling stories of World War II, true. Research, university, textbooks, all true. Being headhunted from England to America, true. So you can see I'm drawing on a lot of myself. And that is what will make this easier for you if you, as you try to come up with the idea. And that truth, actually, another sort of quote, which I remember Michael Caine being interviewed, and when he was first acting, and the director came up to him and said, "What are you doing, Michael?" And he said, "Well, I'm delivering my lines." He said, "Yes, that's the problem. You're delivering your lines. You know your lines. You know what he's going to say, and you know exactly what you're going to say in response to him saying it, and then you know what he's going to say in response to you. But in real life, we don't know what they're going to say. We don't know what we're going to respond with. And that is what keeps it natural. And so this is what we're looking for. A story that doesn't look orchestrated, manufactured. And I think that is an important aspect to keep in mind. The first chapter I wrote put my character into a situation that I had no idea, first of all, why he was there, but secondly, how he was going to get out. And I think that engineering him out of that problem, finding out why he's doing it, that sometimes creates this Michael Caine naturalness that is necessary in novels, because then the reader doesn't feel like this is scripted. Begin to build a storyboard. Put elements on that storyboard, and these can be pieces that you feel are directed towards the story, towards that. A lot of it could be instances in your life that were rather notable. Why does the brain remember certain memories and yet forget others? What makes that distinctive? And that's interesting to me. So there are certain elements with myself that I I look back on and I put these in bubbles because they seemed relevant and possibly could use it. I'm in France and visiting a dungeon in a medieval castle that has an oubliette. This is a prison cell that has no walls, it has no bars, it has no guards. It is a ledge above a small chasm. The prisoner is placed on that ledge and they are now trapped. The only option is to jump off and die a certain death. So they are trapped in this oubliette. They call it oubliette, meaning a place to forget. And I found that fascinating, and I held on to that. Now we go forward quite a few years, and I'm in the big island of Hawaii and exploring a lava tube. And I found this fascinating, the tide marks on the side showing the lava traveling down this lava tube down to the sea opening at the bottom that, because it was dark, looked like an inky blackness, not the sea. And it sort of heaved up and down ominously, as though there was something in it. How do those two parts connect? And why did my brain collate those two elements? Why did it find a connection between those two? I decided to capitalize on that. My character was put in a sealed lava tube in chapter 1 of book 1 because he knew something and they needed containment. And they wanted to keep him isolated until he could answer their questions. So these things that occur to you, put them down, set them into a bubble. It doesn't always mean you will use those pieces. I was doing a little research into astrophysics and finding out the speed that the Earth travels around the sun, for example, and it's about 18 miles per second. So I found that quite fascinating, that you throw let's say a ball down, hits the floor and you capture it in 1 second. Is it coming back to the same point in space and time? The answer is no. It's actually 18 miles along from here. But for us, since we are traveling at that speed, we have no awareness of this speed. This was put down, never used. I think I made a small reference when my character was forlorn and disheartened as to being on a rock flying through space. So put them all down. Don't try and filter or decide what is and isn't there. Just see what we may or may not use. That will be something we decide. So we're putting these things down, and the next part is to begin to look at the emotional elements of your character, to try and build up a profile in one of these bubbles, and other characters, if you feel those they're coming to you, right? Other people possibly that you're basing your characters on. That would be an interesting thing. I always find it quite interesting that I do base it on people I know and people that I have met. And the strange thing is, nobody actually recognizes themselves? And that's another interesting question, isn't it? As to why nobody recognizes themselves. And I think probably that goes back to my other comment, where we are quite outwardly focused and therefore not really looking at ourselves, right? One Christmas, I came up with an idea, a game at the table to play that was actually a real disaster. It was called Guess the Guest. And so someone would do an impersonation of somebody at the table, and then people would try and work out who that was. Well, like most impersonations, sometimes they're exaggerated, and that exaggeration, most of the time the person that was being rendered took offense to it and therefore retaliated with their own version, and so it deteriorated. But one aunt, and this was quite interesting, I did impersonation of her, and she was sort of loved her food, very intense, but she was tended to be a bit volatile in nature. So nobody had chosen her for fear of a reaction, but I did, and she said, "I know exactly who that is," and so the table went quiet, and everybody waited, and she said, "That's Jerry Lewis." Now, I didn't even know I could do Jerry Lewis. So, but there we have it, right? Do we actually know or recognize ourselves? So we're building out characters, and I want you to blur the lines a little bit here. So in the first video, I talked about the fiction and non-fiction. I want you to blur the lines between the genres if you want to stretch. And I think stretching is important. Stretch yourself. Stretch yourself not just into shallow waters, but stretch yourself further, deeper. Almost to that point, David Bowie said it very well. He said, to a point where you're just out of your depth. And play over that line, stretch over that line. And again, we're blurring the lines between fiction and non-fiction as well. So don't feel worried, I think, about that disclosure. And I think that's necessary. And the big thing is you don't have to use everything, but definitely should put everything down. So your journal now is filled with opportunity. And again, difficulty should be seen as a learning opportunity. So if you struggle, just work around it, try something else, come back to it, right? Don't just dogmatically say, I have to finish this part. Because this is where people get bogged down. I need a title. They spend 6 weeks and they still can't find one they like. What's chapter 1? What's chapter 2? I think this is a bad approach. So don't get bogged down with it. In science, we have a 3-step process to building a product. And that research and development phase is what you're doing. The product is your novel. And it's worth borrowing this 3-step process. The first phase is feasibility. This is a theoretical analysis, and this is exactly what we're doing here. We are examining all paths. The theoretical analysis, this feasibility phase, is very important because it will help us to isolate the avenue or direction that is most feasible, highly likely. And that will be a good step, a good investment to isolate, let's say, 10 avenues, lines of investigation, to 2 to 3 that you think are highly probable. The next phase is called proof of concept. So here we are trying to find out whether this avenue, this direction that we're going in, is going to prove itself out. And that is the next part that I'm going to talk to you about. The last phase is the prototype, and that is writing the book, finishing the book, and coming up with this prototype manuscript. So after these 3 steps, by the way, it goes into production once you find a publisher, and from that point, the book is commercially produced. And so, but these 3 steps, I believe, will be helpful to you if you see what you're doing. And it's sometimes good to break things down into steps, because they tend to minimize the distraction. You are focused on this step and this step alone, and you have minimized the other 2 steps. And that is good, because there are enough distractions going on, and there's enough to think about to occupy your mind. The next point I would mention is you need to see if you can find a sounding board, somebody trusted that can be your reader or your sounding board for your ideas. Now, if that person is too critical, they're of no help to you. If they're too agreeable, they're also of no help to you. Ideally, they are an avid reader. We want somebody who almost reads voraciously and therefore has this giant pool to pull from. So put that down and come up with a cast of characters who you think might be ideal. And then, of course, are they available? Would they be interested in this? Those people, they're mentioned in my dedication because they were invaluable to me during this process. So, and you can't thank them enough for all that. So we're looking for that persons, ideally a couple if you can. I had 2. So one who provide more guidance, and the other who just read and was just an ideal almost a perfect editor. And so that's what you're looking for. Next, we are staging a scene. We are thinking about that scene. It might not be, again, a jigsaw puzzle analogy would be that I don't even know where this piece fits, right? It's somewhere. I can't even see how it connects to the others. I just know it's a piece in this puzzle. You must envision this scene, the characters, the plot, the settings, the how this drives forward and why, the point of this scene, and then write it, rewrite it, rewrite it. And it's important that you spend enough time on this to actually perfect it. And if it's exactly right, it almost gives you a landing place, a foothold in the novel. And from that point of now feeling secure, you can now branch forward, backwards, and move from that point forward. Also, you should think about what-if situations as far as story themes. You should also think about writing a elevator pitch, several elevator pitches, a couple of paragraphs. Will they resemble the final back cover copy? There'll bear no resemblance at all to it. But that's okay, right? It's a work in progress, and we don't know what's going to happen next, right? You must keep yourself in mind, right? Keep in mind your character. Define those characters briefly and using what is called the driving license method in the beginning, which is just height, physical appearance, and general characteristics. You know, blonde, 6 foot, blue eyes, right? Athletic, just very general. The main parts of the character should actually unfold as your character is seen in different places, settings, confrontations. You will get to know that character better and better as they go along. Big part in my bubble is the loss of his father and a sort of passion to meet his father. All of his memories are wrapped up in being a child, and so he doesn't know how his father really was. He would like to meet him as an adult, and he comes up with an idea on how to do that by replaying memories from his subconscious into his conscious mind. Again, another strange situation that occurs, right, that seemingly is unconnected, another piece, if you will, in my life where I don't know how that fits, right? I am younger in the fishing village. I'm going to the Royal Navy Sea Cadets, and they give me communications. The communications are, one of the requirements is I have to learn Morse code and send and receive Morse code at a good speed. Most people didn't want communications because of this requirement that you had to go home and do work and study. I was delivering newspapers in England. There are several newspapers, and so we walk the streets in the early morning hours delivering these newspapers. And as I'm walking, I am transmitting the newspapers in Morse code, the street signs, and everything. I think the scientist, and therefore the slightly obsessive nature, which you need for science in order to succeed, that element was there. And so Morse code became almost a second language for me. It felt extremely natural. And a strange situation occurred. I was in a lecture, listening to this lecture, and I remember hearing a Morse code message, and the message was tedious. Now, I thought, where did that come from? It felt like it came from my subconscious, because the lecture was tedious. I was buying a music system for university, since I was in the halls of residence at night, and it was quite boring, right? It's just studying the whole time. And so I'm listening to a salesman, and I pick up another message which is pushy, which I believe he was being pushy. So this formed the basis for an idea and a technology that if you could connect your subconscious to your conscious mind, you could actually play back memories in explicit detail into your conscious mind. And this gives my character the ability to go back in time, replaying memories of his father and the interactions that he had with his father, but to witness it through adult eyes and therefore to meet his father. These things, put them down. Try and get as many things on the page as you can possibly get. The next video is planning and outlining your novel. So that's our next phase, and I'm looking forward to that one. I do thank you for watching, and I do hope this has helped. I hope that you can sit down, think, and at least it gives you a plan, and sometimes having a plan is really helpful. So thank you for joining me, and bye for now.